So Donna, tell us about this great event that you just had.
Well, we just wrapped up last Saturday a unique event that we've been doing only for about 5 years. We didn't do it during COVID, and it was a empowering female veterans event to bring together the female veterans from as far away as North Carolina. A few people came from Fort Bragg all the way around Virginia. And it was designed to sort of recognize that women have served in the military. I know it sounds a little odd, but when I joined the military in the mid 70s, women made up less than 5% of the military. We were definitely an oddity. I mean, when the guys would see us on the base in the uniform, they'd say, "Hey, we heard there were women in the military. We've never seen one before," right? I was like, "Yeah, here we are." So anyway, it was to recognize and give some, status to these women who served at difficult times. We had a Korea era veteran, but she didn't make it for health reasons, but we had several Vietnam era women there. Now you can imagine going to Vietnam as a nurse and serving in a war zone like that, and the stories and situations they went through, right? Reginald and I are both combat veterans, Harold as well. And we've been through some stuff, right? And some of the other women in that group we mentioned the Korea, though. We had Vietnam, Desert Storm, also Balkan Wars. We had Iraq and Afghanistan women there. It was just an amazing group of women to bring them together and hear their stories. We also pampered them that day. We had a great meal for them. We had some great guest speakers to help them with their VA disability.
Everybody get some.
A lot of veterans don't apply for their VA benefits. We provided some assistance for that. So it was just a great day of fellowship, getting to know each other, honoring each other's service. And then one of the more touching moments, and then I'll move on and introduce Kathy. We have I don't know how many of you know this, but there are a lot of hazardous, let's call them waste sites in and around military bases or any kind of federal installation, right? Because of some of the things that go on in those places. One of them is Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. The water there has been contaminated for decades. The government knew it and chose to not take care of it. So a lot of veterans now are sick from some of the places they served at, and one of them is Camp Lejeune. We had a Marine who's been coming to our events for years now. She's wheelchair bound. She has multiple sclerosis that was diagnosed from that contaminated water at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, right? She's just now begun to get her disability checks after years of having to work through the system and battling the VA for them to recognize that she got sick from that water. So this was one of the neat things we were able to do through this event, is to bring those kind of resources together to help this woman. And there were other women in the room that were similar stories, right? But at that day, we recognized her service there's a group of women near me that do handmade quilts for veterans. And it's more or less for veterans that are unfortunately maybe dying. But we didn't know how much longer we have with Elizabeth. That's the name of this veteran, right? So we said, make a quilt for this brave Marine who got sick from MS because she drank some foul water there at Camp Lejeune. So we presented her with her quilt. We wrapped her up in it in her wheelchair. And it was like the best moment of the day was to see the gratitude on her face. It was very touching. So that's what we did a week ago, was to honor and respect these women and give them a day to just sort of see each other and hear each other's stories and know that they did something important for the nation that maybe a lot of people don't recognize or even acknowledge. So I was very proud to be a part of it. But I'm going to shift gears over to Kathy Meyer. Kathy and I met on a Zoom through, I think it was Synapse, wasn't it, Kathy?
Yes, it was.
The Richmond group, the Synapse. Yeah. And it's another great group. Anyway, Kathy and her sidekick, Julie Salomonsky, am I pronouncing her name right?
You got it, Salomonsky.
Salomonsky, have this community they're building from scratch to help adults with autism, because as you know, sometimes it can be challenging for them to, lead life, in a different way than the rest of us do, whether it's, where they live or the jobs they have or just going around their daily tasks, right? It's a little more challenging for them. So Kathy, tell us what you're doing, because I know you're in a big fundraising mode right now for your community, your village that you're creating. It sounds amazing. Tell us about it.
Well, yeah, I should back up and say you did a great presentation there on retirement. And what I'm doing in my retirement is starting a business, a nonprofit. And so I am retired. I am a retired surgeon with a son who is 28 years old with autism. And he's severely affected. And it made me recognize how there really is no plan for when us parents can no longer care for our children. There's no housing for them. The other thing is as a physician, I used to see people who hadn't talked to anybody in weeks except their doctor, and many of the retirement age. So I think now I don't have to tell people that loneliness is hard on your health. Everybody's learned that through the pandemic, how important social lives are. So that's part of my spiel I don't have to go into anymore, because it is as hard on your health as 15 cigarettes a day, and maybe even worse. They'll probably come out with a new comparison. So our goal is to build an autism-friendly, intentional community, multi-generational, that is also about healthy aging. And we foresee new opportunities for people with autism that are also volunteer opportunities for our retirement age people. So for example, we'd love to have the all-day cafe. Only go there if you have all day, because it might be somebody like my son learning how to wait on you. Yeah, so there's a lot of different kinds of things that our people need to be exposed over and over and very gently to different things to branch out. And some of the frightening things is just how easily, people with autism are evicted from housing. For example, there's a young man who was 28 years old and had been living in his own apartment for 3 years, had a job, when he got arrested for cutting the cords on the vacuum cleaners in the building for the second time. Well, those of us who live with autism understand the sensory sensitivities and also the communication issues. And this young man will never be capable of negotiating with the manager, and will never be able to explain to him that the vacuum cleaner noise is torture for him. So instead, he got arrested. And fortunately, the judge recognized that he really wasn't competent, and that he really didn't have any criminal intent. He was just trying to stop the noise. And so basically the judge said for the parents to get guardianship. He dismissed the charges, but unfortunately, the young man was evicted. And without his parents, he would have been homeless. And it's estimated between 20 to 40% of people who are homeless are also autistic or have intellectual developmental disabilities. And so there isn't really screening for those disabilities. And many people with autism, they need very specialized screening. You can't just have a generalized toolkit that's going to help you. And I would say even our social services are not trained in autism. So that's the background for why we have had some training at a model we think that would work very well. There's a community up in East Hampton, Massachusetts called Treehouse Community that brought retirement age people together with families adopting children who've experienced foster care. And so the retirement age people love it. One woman said, I couldn't imagine having a life like I have at this age, because they can create their own new clubs. They can be adoptive grandparents for these kids. They have, everybody knows everybody, and they have an active community center. And so we see this as a great opportunity for a different way to live as people age. And in my area, about 9% of our people over 65 are below the poverty line. And those who are autistic, most are unemployed lifelong and are trying to live on Social Security. And so we're working with a nonprofit developer to build rental property that has a component of affordable housing. And then we would like to also add some home ownership possibilities. So our model, unfortunately, we don't have any billable services, but everywhere we present this concept, people are saying, why doesn't this exist already? And I feel the same way. I think there's just so much that everyone could gain from this, that we're very excited and very passionate about making this happen. And so, yeah, so that's where we are. We know I'm in a town of 18,600. So we know we have to reach out statewide and national to make it happen. And we're determined to do that. So we're well on our way. And Julie, my sidekick, she's wonderful. She's much more social than I am, and she compensates for my lack of social graces in so many occasions. But yeah, we're 3 years old now, and we're still alive despite the pandemic. And we're very happy to have been able to switch gears to online. We were already Zooming our meetings because many of our parents and people who are interested can't get free. They can't leave their families. So we were Zooming before the pandemic.
Wow, what an amazing profile. I mean, but I mean, when you think about the people in our world, in our culture, who face such complications or obligations, and yet, how do you move? How do you get someone who's, you know, bedridden or someone who's house ridden, you know, to a place of independence or relative independence? A tremendous, and that will take a tremendous amount of resources to get, you know, that kind of control in place. And I mean, as a matter of fact, that would be something that the federal government should get involved with, and, you know, and get behind, because I mean, otherwise these, you know, people become, you know, wards of the state, actually. And, you know, I mean, you can't just expect problems like these to go away.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Right. No, it's not going to go away. There are huge numbers of people. I don't retain those kind of numbers very well, but there's a big number of people who are living with parents who are over 60 years old, and there is not housing that's available now. You know, there's some people who, if they just have advocates in their neighborhood who understand them and aren't going to call the police on them and can just be good neighbors. You know, there's you know, probably about, you know, 20% of the people on the autism spectrum could live independently. And then you have more people who could live in a situation like this with people who come in to their home to supervise them and help them with what they need.
Right.
You know, there's lots of other things that would dovetail. Like some people, like, you know, we will be working with other organizations. We're a catalyst organization. We're not a service provider, but we can bring in the sheltered workshop, the vocational rehab people, and they can be the ones who have a place to bring people for all day cafe to teach different kinds of skills. And in a community, there'd be other activities that they would be able to with understanding people. Now, the other piece for seniors, you were bringing up how, you know, you love those people who keep learning. Well, that's exactly what a lot of people want to do in those retirement years. They want to learn something new. They want to do something meaningful, and they want to do it on their terms. And so this model out in Massachusetts has done that. 6 hours a week is what they recommend for volunteering. It can be as easy as baking a pan of brownies and sharing it somewhere. And a lot of people do a lot more volunteering than that. And so, and, you know, the all day cafe getting served would be, you know, your volunteering, but it's also, how do you make friendships and meaningful relationships? It's often by sharing the foxhole, you know, by working together on something that you value.
Now, here in our state, in North Carolina, there's a couple of facilities, and Oldbury Hospital, Cherry Hospital, and they are designed for children like that. It's a state facility, and kids who are born with those issues, they grow up in a home. They grow up, and parents will bring their children and just, I don't know if they'll donate, but they leave them. And, you know, and kids, they prosper, you know, they get their meals, they're trained to some extent on how to care for themselves, you know, so it's quite amazing how that works. And I thought that at one point, this was something that each state did, but it doesn't. In Virginia, for the most part, you know, they send all of the children who find themselves in those conditions through the Department of Education. They're almost expected to learn how to care for themselves. I don't know how you train something like that.
Well, there's a lot of people, lifelong who keep trying to learn, but that they just aren't very capable. And so, but they need opportunities to be exposed to new things and to, be able to choose things that they may not have been initially interested in, but are now. But in autism, many of them are reluctant to try new things. And so, just kind of bringing them first to familiarize them with the place. Anyway, it's a long process, and we're not expecting that. My son, you're almost not allowed to say it. He's never going to live a normal life. We worked very hard with him, but he's never going to live a normal life. He'll climb up.
How old is he?
He's 27, almost 28. And, if he sees a helicopter go by, he'll climb out the window to go see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to applaud you for starting an organization. I think, the main thing is tell one, tell two, tell three, tell four. And I think that everybody who's on this, if Kathy, if you can share your website or information line, and if all of us can share it on Facebook, and those of you watching online can share it, then the message can be shared. So I think what you're doing as a starting point is just being an advocate is important. And just listening to you made me think about, how little I know about autism, even though I have a very lovely friend, Martin, who I spent, Elton and I stayed with them for a few weeks. He lives in London. And we had such a wonderful time because Martin was a great musician and he entertained us. And of course, we went through, seeing anger fits and all the other parts of living with someone, like banging on the door in the middle of the night. But you're right. If you're educated and you understand it and you're a better neighbor, you could solve this problem. You could help them to live independently. So the education portion is extremely important. And I think what you're doing is fabulous. So if we can help you in any way, please let us know. And just sharing information is what we need right now. So I think
in the chat early on, I did put a YouTube link that is about an 18-minute video that I did myself. Desperation, you learn new skills. And then I did put our website in there as well. And the video is our YouTube channel, which I have also done a less than 5-minute presentation. Well, not presentation, a little video about listening with eyes and heart. And so we plan to do an autism enlightenment sequence of these videos. And my next one is going to be a meltdown is not a tantrum. So you may find it interesting to follow that YouTube channel. I hope to keep them all under 5 minutes so that you can just learn autism in little snippets.
Well, there is no, you bring the information to us, there is no national campaign, not a single national, campaign that identifies these issues and creates a project or program that solves these challenges. I mean, from a community point of view, and it's something that's with us. I mean, and God only knows, I'm sure, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she has dealt with her husband who was challenged with the loss of his mother, just melted down, fell apart, and he can't even, chew now. I don't know what happened, because things happen traumatically that people can't overcome and they have to face. And so it brought him to a case like this himself. So, but there's got to be some kind of national approach, a national facility or philosophy that will help people, create solutions for this. on a national basis.
Yeah.
On a national basis.
So anybody, I see Nancy and Deaconess Ernestine Wooten, they know a little bit about autism. So share with us what you think.
Did they hear the comment?
Yes.
So we had a young lady in our church. We just took her on and worked with her and made her feel that she was just really a part. And we were able to get her to start making some suggestions. So one way is to work with them and let them know that they too have something to offer.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
important.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's
So from a national point of view, you know, I mean, I've never ever heard any political campaigner or politician deal with any matters relevant to this at all. No person on the national stage. I have never heard a person say, you know, we really have to do something with our brothers and sisters who are working with, or what do you call it, mentally and physically challenged, who are politically correct. I mean, you know, and as a culture, we kind of ignore it, and you know, and we don't have a philosophy on how we should deal with it. As a matter of fact, you know, a friend of mine, he was a colonel in the U.S. Army, and he had a brother now, and his brother, you know, just ever since I've known him, his brother was, you know, a nickel short of a dime. You know, to put it a simple way, was a nickel short of a dime. And you talked to him and he heard you, but he didn't hear you. I mean, you know, and it wasn't mean spirited or anything like that. It was just a nickel short of a dime, always, you know. And so we have a population in America that is in that position, you know, and even people who've grown up with a full dime, you know, still find themselves deficient in some ways, you know, so for whatever reason. So these are elements that need to be discussed, need to be talked about, need to be brought to the helm so we can find solutions for them and ways that they can cope.
So each one tell one, share the message. And thank you, Kathy, for that. And I'll make sure that our group has the links as well to watch. Thank you.